Can you feel this? Chapter summary. Both Marinette and Adrian each wake up from a wet dream about their partner turned lover, and they both worry with good reason that their heats are progressing to the next level. For Adrian, the line between Ladybug and Marinette is mysteriously blurred. When he sees his lady without her mask in his dream, Marinette puts on a new look and executes Operation Seduce Adrian Agrest, which leads to some very sexually charged moments and sends Adrian's sanity into a tailspin when the itch strikes him without warning. After the class is divided into groups for a science project and Adrian pushes through fencing class, he spends lunch period talking to Flag about his mating cycle, desperate for some explanation to his predicament. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Feel this, can you feel this? My heart beating out of my chest. Feel this, can you feel this? Salvation under my breath. Bethany Joe Gagliotti, feel this feat. E-Nation. Tuesday, September 6th. Marinette couldn't have explained how she ended up like this, but that was how dreams worked. They always seemed to start in the middle of the action, and only made sense as they happened. Thus, it never once occurred to her to wonder how she had ended up lying naked with Chat Noir on her bed, wrapped tightly in his arms and craving his touch more than she had craved anything before in her life. All that mattered was that she was finally getting what she so desperately needed. Tender touches from gentle hands, deep pressure from loving arms, and sweet, sweet kisses from reverent lips. She clung to Chat Noir desperately, wanting, needing, to keep her body pressed flush against his. As he rutted against her, sending delicious throbs of pleasure rippling through her body. She was so wet, it was like her body was weeping with need for him. In the throes of her intense arousal, she couldn't stop squirming, squeezing Chat Noir's hips between her thighs and rubbing her calves against his legs as he ravaged her neck with kisses, licks, and love bites. Even with the husky rumble of his purr right under her ear, she could hear the sounds of her own pants and whimpers piercing the silence of her room. Please, she moaned, struggling to maintain the rhythm of her rolling hips against his as her pleasure reached a fevered pitch. Please. More. I need more. Chat Noir, I need you. Quote. I want, he panted, to give you everything you want, my lady. He latched onto the side of her neck in another love bite and stole a taste of her skin with a greedy swipe of his tongue. But I have to find you, or you have to find me. He raised his head so that he could look into her eyes. His expression was yearning, his pupils blown wide, though he was having just as much trouble keeping his eyes open as she was. I'll share every part of me with you, if you'll share yourself with me, Marinette. She couldn't properly form words to answer him with, she could only try to nod fervently in hope. Her expression told him what he wanted to hear. Every other breathless pant to escape her was a soft cry of pleasure, her climax mere seconds away. He brought his hands to her face and pulled her in for a kiss. Only for her to wake with a startled gasp. Panting slightly, she blinked several times, dazed. She was a bit sweaty, and her skin felt ever so slightly tingly. No, it was the same slight ache she had felt last night, that craving for cuddles from Chat Noir. Shifting slightly, she registered that her bed sheets were in disarray, tangled up and twisted around her legs. Not all that unusual for her, but whoa, hang on, why are my panties so wet? Oh. Spreading her legs apart slightly, she touched a fingertip to the crotch of her panties and found that, sure enough, she was wet enough to have soaked right through them. Did I just have a wet dream about Chat Noir? Oh man. I bet Ticky's gonna tell me my heat is getting worse. Marinette sat up and shivered in response to a throb of lingering arousal between her thighs. Ticky. She called softly. Ticky flew into Marinette's field of view from below, looking fully awake and chipper as always. Good morning. Ticky greeted. I'm guessing you had a very erotic dream about Chat Noir that you want to talk about. Marinette gaped at Ticky. Wah. Was it that obvious? Did I say his name in my sleep or something? Well, Yes, you did, but even if you hadn't, it's an easy guess for me. Almost every single Ladybug and Heat has at least one dream about Chat Noir, and you were moving around a lot. And stuff. She smiled apologetically at Marinette, who was blushing magenta with embarrassment. Yeah, I did, she admitted. And my panties are soaked through, she whispered. Bashfully. She forced herself to look back up at Tiki. Is that another one of my symptoms? Ah, Tiki looked more serious. Yes, that's the extra wetness starting up. Considering you've started feeling the ache already, I'd be more surprised if you weren't experiencing this by now. Marinette's eyes bugged out, she had just remembered something. So that means Chat Noir's gonna be able to smell it, too. She croaked. And it's going to make him want me even more. Quote. Tiki nodded gravely. Sorry, Marinette. I'd recommend wearing panty liners from here on out. Until your cycle is over, it won't mask the scent from Chat Noir, but at least you don't have to worry about getting your shorts and pants and skirts wet. Marinette yanked her pillow towards her, buried her face in it, and screamed. Oh, Marinette. Try not to worry about it so much, Tiki said bracingly. Oh, I know. She perked up again and smiled at Marinette encouragingly, clapping her paws together. Weren't you going to dress up for Adrian today? Why don't you pick out your outfit? Oh. Marinette sat up ramrod straight and shoved her pillow back behind her where it belonged. Grabbing her phone, she scrambled down the stepladder and opened up her messages app to look back at her text conversation with Aaliyah from last night. An off-the-shoulder or peekaboo shoulder top, she muttered to herself, scrolling slowly through the conversation. My mini shorts, my raspberry lip gloss, and body glitter for my collarbone. Should I wear my hair different today, too? She tried to picture herself as Adrian might see her, approaching from a distance. Where would his eyes be drawn? Or rather, where did she want his eyes to be drawn? I wonder what he thinks my most attractive features are, she thought. Certainly I'd like him to be drawn to my lips. She grinned giddily at the thought. Ah, and wouldn't it be nice if he could get lost in my eyes? Ooh. Or if he got the urge to run his fingers through my hair because he's never seen it down before and thought it looked pretty fluttering in the breeze. Eeeeeeee. But wait, what I definitely know he's noticed is my scent. He's sniffed me, what, twice now? At least. Maybe that's what I should emphasize, in which case I think I should actually go without the body glitter. I don't want it interfering with my natural scent. Because, whatever my scent is, like, he seems to really like it. Now having a good idea of what she wanted her look to be, Marinette headed straight for the bathroom to wash her face and brush her hair, feeling bold and excited. She was everywhere. All around him. His entire world had shrunk down to the size of a single room, everything else disappearing until nothing existed beyond the two of them, entwined in one another on the bed. He held her as close as humanly possible, and she clung to him desperately, pressing her body against him and letting her legs tangle with his. She was letting him grind out his pent-up hunger for her against her slick folds, and the wet sounds mingled with her ragged pants, whimpers, and soft moans, further fueling the fire in his blood and pulling sounds of pleasure from him that rivaled her own in volume, some of them he wasn't sure had ever come out of him before. He kissed her like their lives depended on it, breaking away only to lap greedily at her bare skin and gently but ravenously gnaw at her neck. Please, she moaned. I need more. Chat Noir, I need you. Quote. I want, he panted, to give you everything you want, my lady. He dragged his teeth over her skin and tasted lust on his tongue. Please, she whispered. I want to find you, find me, Chat Noir. He raised his head so that he could look into her eyes, struggling to keep his eyes open and make his mind focus. Find you. Find me. Her expression was yearning, and even in the dark, he could see the blush in her cheeks. Her mask wasn't there. Quote dot dot dot. Marinette. He had never seen her like this in real life, her dark hair tousled on the bed beneath her cheek, her face flushed and lips parted as she panted and whimpered her pleasure, her eyelids fluttering as she clung to him. And yet, there was no doubt in his mind, those sky blue eyes, petite nose, and soft pink lips, they could only be hers. His lady. Mesmerized by the sight of her, the sounds of her, he cupped her face in his hands and coaxed her lips towards him, only for it all to disappear when he woke with a gasp. The first thing he registered was that his underwear was sticky with jizz. Adrian grumbled in annoyance. Come on, we didn't even get to finish in the dream. He thought, pouting. It always has to end in the middle of the action. Adrian shivered. He seemed to have sweated a lot over the course of the night, and his bed covers were a lot more tousled around him than usual. Given what kind of a dream he had just had, he wasn't really surprised, and dreams like this about Ladybug were fairly common for him, now especially since the glorious day she had returned his feelings and kissed him straight to cloud nine. And yes, he had dreamed about being intimate with her, as intimate as two humans could be with each other. No, the only strange part was that he had taken the preventative measure of taking care of himself right before he went to sleep and had still managed to come in his sleep. He couldn't remember the last time it hadn't worked. Maybe he was foolish to assume it was a foolproof strategy, but he just couldn't help but wonder. Dot dot dot. Is this another sign my heat is getting worse? Rolling over, he reached for his phone on his desk beside the bed to check the time. His alarm was due to go off in less than 10 minutes. With a sigh, he sat up, heaved himself to his feet, and headed for the bathroom to freshen up. After his morning shower, Adrian found Plag awake and waiting for him, looking strangely expectant sitting on his pillow. Good morning. Adrian greeted Plag warily, keeping one eye on the Kwame as he cautiously approached his dresser. The morning isn't good until I've had my cheese, Plag responded pompously, crossing his tiny arms and puffing out his chest. Sleep well? He asked smoothly. Sounded like you and Ladybug were having quite the dreamland frolic in the sheets, or was it Marinette this time? Adrian turned bright red and gaped at Plag in humiliated outrage, but then remembered something strange from his dream. It was Ladybug, but, he frowned thoughtfully. But she was. She wasn't wearing her mask. And I called her Marinette, even though I was calling her, my lady, before. He brought a hand to his head, straining to think back, but finding his memory fuzzy. I can't remember if her face changed. I just know I recognized her. I don't know if she was Ladybug the whole time, or if was Marinette the whole time, and I just switched names for dream logic reasons, or if she changed at some point and I didn't notice or care for dream logic reasons. I think you're overthinking the whole thing, Plag remarked carelessly. It was a dream, it doesn't have to make any sense. We already know you've got the lovey-dovey eyes for Marinette, as well as Ladybug. Now well, I know, anyway, so your subconscious dreamed up a fantasy where you got to have them both. I do not have the same feelings for Ladybug and Marinette, Adrian said flatly. I won't pretend I know what I feel for Marinette, but whatever it is, it's different. Whatever you say, lover boy, Plag drawled. Anyway, Adrian pushed on, starting to pull out his clothes for the day. That wasn't the only weird thing. She told me. She wanted to find me, or that I had to find her. I was already there with her, but she made it sound like she couldn't, like we couldn't be together until something important happened. Plag heaved a sigh, apparently exasperated with Adrian's density. Obviously, that's your subconscious expressing your desire to know Ladybug's true identity and for her to know yours before you two go all the way to rolling in the hay, he explained. Adrian scowled, and blushed again as he always did at any mention of sleeping with the love of his life. Well, whatever, maybe you're right, and it's nothing, he admitted, shoving his feet into a pair of dark gray jeans. But what about the fact that I took preventative measures and yet still managed to come in my sleep? He asked, forcing the sentence out before he could trip over his words in embarrassment. What about it? Flag retorted, shrugging. You're a teenage boy lusting after a girl or two and you're in heat on top of that. Hardly shocking. That's my point. Adrian exclaimed, pulling on a long-sleeved apple green shirt. What if it's a sign that my heat is about to get worse? Of course it's getting worse, Flag drawled. You two can't lock eyes without locking lips for 2 hours. Erg. Adrian groaned in frustration. Flag, just tell me if I'm being paranoid or not. It could be related, but it might not be, Flag responded offhandedly with a shrug. It's not a symptom by itself, although, speaking of symptoms, Adrian spun around, a dark green sweater in his hands, and stared at Flag in alarm. I figure I might as well warn you about what comes next, Flag said, settling himself more comfortably on Adrian's pillow. We call it the itch. It feels like a barely there itch, but under your skin, mostly in your scalp, neck, shoulders, back, and chest. You'll start to crave ladybugs. Touch well, even more than usual because the only way to soothe it is for ladybug to stroke you. Or by rubbing against ladybug, like a cat, basically. I'm not trying to add to your worries, he added. Just warning you, so you recognize it when it hits you. Adrian had to take a moment to digest this new, alarming information. And it's just one of the symptoms. He finally asked. It's not actually harmful. No, but it'll get steadily worse over time as the rest of your symptoms develop and drive you crazy. Keep me updated on how it changes, it'll help warn us that your feline tendencies are going to add up. Okay, Adrian sighed, pulling the sweater over his head. There's so much to worry about. Keeping track of it all can be my job, Flag said. You just keep talking to me, okay? Okay, thanks, Flag. I don't know what I'd do without you. You wouldn't be Chat Noir, and your life would be dreary. Flag responded instantly, puffing himself up. Now, where's my camembert? Tilda. When Marinette came out of Tom and Sabine's boulangerie, she found Aaliyah waiting for her. Aaliyah, are you going to walk to school with me? She asked, stroking a lock of her own hair. Absent-mindedly. Duh. Girl, this morning is going to be a turning point in the story of your love life. Aaliyah exclaimed, gesturing grandly. I've gotta make sure your outfit is on point and give you the inspirational pep talk. She looked Marinette up and down. What do you think? Marinette asked, smiling as she gave a slow twirl. I wasn't sure if wearing a necklace or bracelet would dressing up a bit too much or not, but I followed your recommendations. Peekaboo shoulder top, kinda short but not mini shorts, and something different for my hair and lip gloss. Oh, and I decided to go with my macaron pink sandals and a matching headband. She brought a hand up to the headband in question, which was decorated with pink blossoms. I kept my makeup face the same, though. What did you do to your nose? Aaliyah asked, leaning in curiously. Oh, Marinette had forgotten all about the scrape on the tip of her nose until she had started doing her morning makeup, but it looked like it hadn't quite scabbed over completely, so she had dabbed some antibiotic cream on it instead of trying to cover it up with concealer. I scraped it on the wall when I was rushing downstairs. Well, I still give the outfit 10 out of 10. Aaliyah said with a wink and a finger gun. I love the ruffles along the neckline. It's still totally you, but it also whispers, there's something about her today. If you don't catch Adrian ogling at you, at least for a second, then he's in oblivious. Banana tree. Great. So, Marinette and Aaliyah started walking down the sidewalk. Should I act any differently when I'm around him? I mean, do I have to do something special? You know I'm not very good at being subtle. No, you have a hard enough time acting normal around him already. Aaliyah laughed. Just be yourself, same as always, but watch him. Pay attention to where his eyes go, and we'll get an idea of how well an outfit can catch his attention. Oh, okay. I think I can do that, Marinette said slowly, nodding. Privately to herself, she added, let's see if he tries to sniff me again, too. Her heart was fluttering with nerves, but also with excitement. Tilda. Now that Adrian had an idea of how his heat was going to further torture him next, he felt restless. And on edge, almost paranoid. He couldn't stop worrying that this itch was going to come on suddenly out of nowhere and make it impossible for him to function. From the way Plag had spoken about it, it sounded like it was going to develop gradually and worsen over time, more quickly the more often he and Ladybug saw each other. Wait a minute, he thought. Ladybug. If I'm going to start feeling all weird and awful and craving Ladybug's touch, then, won't she start feeling like that, too? So far, it seems like each of Ladybug's symptoms are either counterparts to each of my symptoms, or the same as mine. So, that means. He felt his face turn red. She's going to be craving my touch because she's going to be feeling miserable and my touch is the only thing that can make her feel better. Oh God. How am I supposed to suddenly stop touching her if that's what keeps her from feeling miserable? That goes against every fiber of my being. How? He made a mental note to talk to Plag ASAP so he could hopefully figure out how he and Ladybug were going to handle this. Oh man, Adrian rubbed his hands over his face tiredly. These next 2.5 weeks are going to be so stressful. And what about that? Stress is not conducive to romance. Geez, it's like our miraculouses are torturing us until we stop fighting their influence and just give in. Wow, that really sucks. Adrian, we're here. Adrian returned to the present at the sound of Nathalie's voice. The car must have pulled up to the school and he hadn't reacted. Sorry, he said, grabbing his bag. I'm moving, now. Right on cue, the gorilla opened the curbside passenger door for him from outside. Adrian got out of the car and started making his way to the school doors. He casually glanced around at the other students also arriving, just in case he knew any of them. On the days Nino got to school earlier, he liked to take the spare time to chat with his best friend. He found Nino waiting for him in the hallway. He gave a cheery wave, feeling more relaxed now. That he was in familiar good company. Hey, man. The two boys exchanged a fist bump. You've got fencing today later, right? Adrian dug out his phone to check. Yeah, looks like I do. He responded, his voice a pitch higher than usual. He had been so frazzled this morning from his talk with Plag that he had apparently not taken in anything from the schedule Natalie had shown him at breakfast. Lucky, Nino groaned. All of us who don't have sports today have to go to the library and get assigned into small groups for our first research project. What, so, everyone with sports on Wednesday gets a free pass? Adrian asked, confused. That doesn't seem fair. No, you're getting assigned into a group, same as the rest of us, you just don't have to meet with your group in the library to do whatever practice assignments the teacher gives us for picking out our topics and stuff, Nino explained. It means instead of having to review how to research our topic materials and plan and pre-write an essay for the umptieth time, you get to go to a fencing lesson and then start collaborating on whatever topic the rest of your group has settled on and skip the awkward as hell study session with the teacher hovering around talking to us like we're grade schoolers the whole time. I would have preferred to help pick a topic and help with planning, even if our science teacher is a bit grating sometimes, Adrian said sympathetically. Hopefully we'll both get assigned to groups with people we can work well with. Yeah, like each other. Nino said. That would be nice, or maybe with Leo or with Marinette. Just as long as none of us are stuck with Chloe. Adrian smiled awkwardly and forced a chuckle. I don't think Chloe would do anything to disrupt the project. She'd probably find an excuse to not do her share of the work at all. That was when she had Sabrina to do her homework for her, Nino grumbled. Maybe she'll try to recruit a new crony. Honestly, I think she's still handing off a lot of her schoolwork to Sabrina, Adrian said with another wry smile. Sabrina's been doing Chloe's homework since grade school. Hey, wow, Nino chuckled, shaking his head. Makes sense, though. Just then, something behind Adrian seemed to catch Nino's attention. He leaned slightly to the side to look over Adrian's shoulder and waved, smiling. Hey, girls. Adrian turned around as Aaliyah returned Nino's greeting and waved back. He didn't recognize Marinette at first without her hair and their signature pigtails, but when she spoke a second later, the familiar sound of her voice made it click. Hi, Adrian. She greeted shyly with a little wave. His heart did a giddy little flutter and his focus of attention zoomed in completely on Marinette. He felt almost spoiled to be the first, sole recipient of Marinette's attention, like a little kid on his birthday. He zeroed in on the somewhat shy but happy gaze she was fixing him with, and vaguely registered his own mouth stretching into a smile. Hi. He responded. I almost didn't recognize you, Marinette. Inwardly, he was surprised to hear his voice coming out much softer and half an octave higher than usual. His hand came up involuntarily to rub at the back of his neck as he felt his cheeks warm, but then he noticed the pinkish red scrape on the tip of her nose, and he frowned in concern. What happened to your nose? He asked, leaning in slightly. His hand hovered uncertainly just in front of him as he stopped himself from reaching out to touch her cheek. What? Oh, Marinette giggled a little breathlessly. Adrian thought and brought up a hand to tuck a lock of hair behind her ear. I, scraped it on the wall when Dot was running downstairs. She grinned sheepishly. It looks worse than it is, it's no big deal. Adrian opened his mouth to respond, but then noticed something that, to him, was like discovering a great treasure of the earth, and he simply couldn't hold himself back. He reached out and gently brought his fingertips to Marinette's cheek. She went still and watched Adrian's face, transfixed. Unnoticed by their mutual friends, meanwhile, Aaliyah and Nino had shuffled off to give the two lovebirds their space. I never noticed you had freckles, he murmured, his gaze warming. How did I never notice them? Marinette blushed, but rather than stiffening out of nervousness, she seemed to relax in response to his voice, her lips slackening, and her eyes softening. Something about her expression filled him with the temptation to bring his other hand to her face and coax her to him so that he could wrap his arms around her and pull her close and kiss her over and over again as they let their hands stroke loving warm into each other's skin. Nope. Nope, don't even think about it. Adrian scolded himself. Of course, telling yourself to not think about something is an almost surefire way to make yourself think about it more, and so Adrian only found himself further imagining what it would feel like to have their bare bodies pressed against each other, arms wrapped around each other, exploring and worshipping. ... Oh my god, what is wrong with me? No, don't freak out, just don't do anything creepy. Marinette's voice brought him back to reality, and in hindsight, Adrian was proud he didn't startle and retreat away from her in a rush to give her back her space. He was certainly freaking out over his own behavior on the inside, but Marinette didn't seem weirded out at all. Well, they are pretty tiny, she said with a smile, her gaze dropping modestly. Wait, what are talking about, again? Adrian thought. Oh, right, her freckles. They really are adorable. Almost invisible in the winter, and they're not all over my face, just, across the bridge of my nose, mostly. Marinette scratched an itch at the corner of her jaw with a finger. I don't really expect anybody to notice them, am I babbling? She thought, yeah, I'm definitely babbling. Adrian's eyes followed the motion of her hand and fixed on the side of her neck, and he vividly recalled the lovely scent of her at the sight. At that point, it was impossible to not notice